Well, it's been 3 years since I made the Arryu series, which started as a horribly written DeviantArt post, then got turned into a neat series posted on YouTube. So join me as we begin to take a plunge into the murky waters that is the Arryu's rocky development. So how did this whole thing actually start? While I could say it started as that one DeviantArt post, it actually started out as a random Gmod roleplay, where me and Lucy made some self-insert OCs, had a couple of Genshin Impact characters, as well as some actual FNAF characters, but of course we can't forget some of the FNAF OC characters such as Popbrock. The plot was simple. Xander wanted to make a pizzeria and found an abandoned one to do that at. He would buy some animatronics as well as make his own along with AU Lucy. Basically, it was a FNAF 6 inspired roleplay, without the whole pizzeria burns down kind of thing. However, I do remember that the Genshin Impact character, Klee, who is Xander's real child, more of that later, had some kind of grudge against him. Side note, I know what the grudge was, but it was extremely distasteful the way I handle it, and kind of mention it as a casual thing like, oh yeah, this happened, moving on. I learned now that it wasn't right for that heavy of a topic to be in a story about a demon trying to get revenge on a crusty kid with a Chica mask. Either way, point is, I realized my mistake and have changed that plot point for the better. Also, if you have no idea what I'm on about, go to the last couple sentences under this post on screen relating to the very first version of the story. Anyways, I will later on give up trying to roleplay and trying to write down a poorly written retelling of events in some Google document, just to post it on DeviantArt where it got 2 views and no further engagement than that. However, I would keep roleplaying on my own volition without putting the story out to the public, and then eventually awkwardly ending it in the most confusing way possible. I swear, once I actually reread how I ended the story initially, I became so confused, even though I'm the original creator of this whole thing. The only reason why it's so hard to read is because I wanted to complete the story so bad, I just got it over with and wrote that. I don't think I cared about the quality or pacing of it either. Also, in the middle of development for the Arryu, I had taken some screenshots of a comic about Popbrock I wanted to put together then post. However, I guess I just forgot that I had even taken these in the first place. Then they're just digitally rotting within my laptop. That wasn't until I eventually found these screenshots then put it all together. So I'll do a little dub over the comic now. Toy Freddy, who did this to you? What about the murders, bad publicity, and yeah, I know, Henry, but I don't know who I should add next. Ugh, why can't you let this godforsaken company rot away? Maybe it's because I don't want to, you little... Why would I want to stop this company? I'll keep it going, so long you stay out of my way. I might end up remaking that comic due to how low quality the screenshots are and just to make the whole thing look a whole lot more cleaner. Anyways, on the topic of Popbrock, after the Arryu had ended, I wanted to make a video going into more detail about his backstory, and I think to also flesh out his character. Fun fact, you can actually find this video on my channel. It's basically just a comic but with a slightly different ending. Speaking of retellings, I believe shortly after this video was made, I finally wanted to get back to fixing the area by making it a written story like how it originally was. Thankfully, I gave up making this rewrite due to a lack of motivation, and I say thankfully because I wrote some things in that rewrite I wish I had never thought of putting in a story like this. Again, I think I was trying to make characters bad, but failed miserably since I didn't handle the topics well. Finally, throughout all of these remakes, there was one that I didn't give up on, and that was the Renewed Era. Now, I know what some of you might be saying, but Xander, I thought the Renewed Era season 2 of the series. That's the thing. It is now. You see, when I first started the Renewed Era, I didn't even realize I started it. Lucy wanted to do a roleplay about her OC having a birthday party. I'm like, okay, we could do that. Then, since I've been making videos on my channel for a bit now, and realized I can record, I thought, why not record this as just some random roleplay while using the Area characters? So that happened, but I think while either doing that or afterwards, I had realized, wait, why not just record a bunch of episodes of the Area and make it from the ground up again? So for a while, that's where my mindset was at the time. Until during the middle of the Renewed Era's development, I tried to remember literally everything about the original story and somehow succeeded. No clue how I did it with just my memory, like only 10 DeviantArt posts and a bunch of screenshots, but I'll get into later, but I mean, it worked. However, because of this, I stumbled into a dilemma. I can either ignore everything about the original story and keep the remake going, or continue to make the series while I try to find a way to integrate the original story into the one I'm making now. I obviously went the latter since I just thought that'd be more interesting than trying to do the other thing. So when the Renewed Era had ended, I got to work on a comic retelling the events from the original story. However, due to how much work making a comic actually is, I gave up and lost motivation. But that didn't stop me, since I thought it'd just be best to return to form and remake the original story, now renamed into the Fragmented Era, into another YouTube series. Speaking of the Fragmented Era, I thought it'd be neat to go over all the old and nearly lost to time screenshots of the original roleplays that me and Lucy would do together. Starting off with a screenshot I took of Xander and the crew preparing to fight off Hu Tao, except Xander's hand looks like the got him okay meme from a few years back. This screenshot is when Xander got kidnapped by Hu Tao. However, I think I was making Xander get something from the tub he was in and decided it'd be funny if I made second friend look at, you know what, never mind. Moving on from that, we have an image of the crew winning against Hu Tao's madness for now. The reason for why there's a portal there in that image is because this is when time travel was a major plot point in the story, due to Xander always wanting to fix things. Here are some images of Xander and Ganyu being a couple. I believe these images were of Xander making a proper phase location. Also, I think this is the first time when Jalapeno Bear and Bunny were ever conceived. Though, as usual, Pete's is never allowed to overstay its welcome. So Hu Tao had evaded and vandalized the pizzeria as an act of revenge towards everyone after they had defeated her. Though she had a little helper by her side. That was a malicious copy of Pop Rock that I shall now refer to as Poplicate. I just mashed the name of Pop Rock and the word duplicate together to come up with the name. This screenshot was when Hu Tao made it was basically to torture Lucy, Vlogchat, and for some forsaken reason, Klee. I again don't like what I did here, and I think I was just trying to make Hu Tao be this really evil and morally incorrect person, but I just ended up making the story seem really gross for absolutely no reason. I, in fact, really hated this plot point that it got scrapped entirely in the remake, and furthermore, was never alluded to. Also, while Hu Tao was torturing them, she had put them in hamster balls to disorient and make the trio dizzy. Following the plot point of Hu Tao causing distress and pain onto the characters, Hu Tao is seen telepathically choking Ganyu, and that's about it of Hu Tao's major character arc. Now we can move on to some images with Xander and Pop Rock's development arcs. Here are some images of Pop Rock teaming up with Chuck, the past, who I'll explain later, and some Genshin characters. While the other image consists of surviving characters and the ones that Pop Rock did unfortunately manage to kill. Some of these other screenshots are when Xander became that Springtrap knockoff that I call Pop Lock. While I don't got much to say about this character, I do remember they had lied and said he was some unknown version of Pop Rock that Xander was working on, and I guess just randomly came to life at some point. Next screening is of that one monster version of Xander, albeit with a different color palette, along with the rock buns, at the time called Pop Rock, being torn apart by Monster Xander. Speaking of Xander, here's an image of another variant that I'll just call Insane Remains. This first image is when it was first made, and then these images show Insane Remains, I think, killing Klee. Advancing to the last two images, it shows Lucy covered in void goop due to her spending time in the happy place dimension she made. Speaking of that, in an attempt to bring everyone back and kill them all, Xander had opened a portal there so he could send this gigantic version of Pop Rock and get them all. Alright, now we could talk about some original screenshots I took of characters. Starting off, we got Lost Freddy, Annie, Chuck, a Savage Springtrap, and Utao. Then we got some Genshin characters, Psychic Friend, and some wiry puppet character that was remains of Lefty at the FNAF 6 Fire, if I recall correctly. Here we got an image of Xander, Lucy, her child Chi-Chi, Klee, Vlogtrap, and then this particularly odd character that I called the Past. Apparently due to Xander messing around with time so much, broken timeline pieces had glued themselves together to form a character that quite literally represents the past. This character also had the personality of Xander and Lucy combined, since I guess they're just the two most important characters within the series. In this screenshot we have a whole slew of animatronics that are going to be involved, got scrapped, or reused in the final version of the story. I'll only be going over scrapped or unused characters, beginning with the sort of fixed up Wither Bonnie. He's supposed to have a mustache and a fancy hat in this image, but forgot to add it in. But because he would wear those, I call him British Bonnie. He would also drink tea with his pinky out. Yendo was just another random side character, but was later given a proper story and ended up becoming a way more important character until they sort of got replaced later on. I'll once again get into that later. Up next are some Fredbears and Spring Bonnies. I think these guys are just random animatronics for Xander to collect since he was obsessed with getting Fazbear memorabilia, or were just side characters in the background of certain sets. These last three characters are purely background ones, and never really served a real purpose or even got character development. That White Fox, I believe, was supposed to be some version of Tangle from FNAF World. I think I just wanted to make a cool looking Shadow Bonnie, but thought it'd also be neat to throw him to the area. The green Chico plush down at the bottom was supposed to be Foxy's parrot, and again was a side character that didn't do anything. This weird messed up looking Springtrap was called Savage and acted like a rabid dog. And then this old Freddy character I called Lost Freddy, which is this random animatronic that got involved in the area and was shortly killed off by Pop Rock. Before I also forget, there is this monochrome looking Bonnie that Klee had made that would be able to shoot bombs. This character is never recreated due to Rock Buns already having a bomb shooter, and it would probably just bloat the character roster anyways. In one of the Phantom Splinks animatronics images, not only is there Vlogtrap's old model, but also Phantom Splink's Balloon Boy. He never really served a purpose and didn't ever add on to the dynamic the other four already had. Instead of the Void Keeper, there used to be a character from a hat time called the Snatcher, or as Lucy would call him,
Mr. Eat My Poo Poo.
Only great names can be found here, I guess. Moving right along, there is going to be a Splink Shadow Bonnie, but he was later on to be forgotten about and was never added back. Then we got Xander's original model, but with a Bonnie mask. The only reason why his mask was changed is because instead of Bonnie being my favorite character, it later turned into Chica. It still is. Then finally we have Chuck. So Chuck wasn't ever made in Gmod at first. It was actually some random ass OC Lucy had strung together in the Pizza Roleplay Remastered. His name was also an acronym for 3S. Like I said, only the greatest of names can be found here. Alright, with all that out of the way, time to get into some scrap content that I'll try to go through really fast. Klee would torture Xander with nightmares, Ultra used to be involved in the Fragmented era, Shadow Bonnie was going to be to replace it for the Void Keeper, there used to be some weird recolored Wither Tochica, Pop Rock was going to turn to Nightmare Pop Rock, but this was later reused for the renewed era. Rock Bond stalking outside Xander's home. Xander used to dream about Among Us and Dang and Rompo like scenarios with the Fragmented era characters. Klee and Utao would have teamed up at some point. Then there was a phrase mainly said by Klee, which is if they don't feel too great, they'll disintegrate, which was just about characters being sent to the void. Xander used to have some Genshin characters hanging around him as family, but Klee and Lucy were the only real family members that were related to him. During Hutao's mayhem, she had a Uga Chaka baby army, and while one of them was on top of Xander, he would shout, "Get off me, you fat orphan!" Bill Cipher, Wheatley, A Hat in Time, and Ben the Ink Machine were also all involved at some point. Xander also was a confirmed alcoholic, but this only ever ended up being alluded to in the Fragmented Era, since I again felt this was too heavy of a topic to cover in a story like this. Also during Hutao's madness, she would kidnap Lucy, and then as the crew were looking for her, they'd all be teleported to the school from Deltarune and meet Noelle. Later on, one by one, they were all teleported back into some Fazbear Frights-esque building, so that way Hutao and her henchmen could taunt the crew. Also the vampire lady from Resident Evil with Xander and Lucy's mother at some point. Okay, time to go over some scrap content about the renewed era. I can't be as fast as time, but I'll try my best here. Ultra was going to recreate Fredbear's. There's a location called Red Bear's Pizza Palace. There's going to be an episode of Power Rock visiting Ultra at his house. Ultra would have phases that were going to be a step-by-step plan and gaining power or something. There was a duplication device to make building animatronics easier, and after later on used this in one episode to make clones of himself. AR animatronics are going to be used. Alphen would have tried to sell all the children in the series on eBay. There used to exist an animatronic facility, but just ended up becoming the warehouse seen in episode 1 of the renewed era. I was going to make a sister location roleplay too to be more accurate to FNAF's lore, but felt it was too filler and got out of the way of everyone else's story. And here's an entire scrapped thing about Xander and his villain arc. Xander was going to make a location of those colored Funtime animatronics seen in the Fragmented Era, but was still haunted by the grief of what happened back at Annie's. So he had lured 4 kids in the back and killed them all using a spring-like pop rock suit. During after hours, Xander thought of a way to dispose the bodies by stuffing them into the animatronics. However, they came to life at some point, causing Xander to try running to the back room so he can hide. Little does Xander know, this is exactly where the now haunted machines wanted him at. He would stuff him into the spring-lock suit, so he knows how they felt, and would beat Xander up until the spring-locks came loose, killing him. Yeah, this just felt like Afton's fate, but adding a little more depth for the reasonings, and giving characters an actual motive. Something FNAF isn't good at. Something else that was going to be related to the story, but wasn't, is Lucy's pocket dimension. It's not related or important now, but it was a Discord server me, Lucy, and a couple of our friends would roleplay in. While this cool scene and a variant of Xander were made, that doesn't compare for what is next. Vera's character was initially made here, and I'll read it out right now. Vera's character. Vera is a character that will be mostly behind the scenes, lurketh in the shadows. Her child was a good one, but felt it wasn't good enough. She wanted to become famous eventually, but she felt she was too good to do so. Vera has her own small business and makes a good profit off it. Vera is very intelligent and is very aware of her surroundings. Eventually, she felt she was too good for her own family and faked her own death to get away from them. And to prove her worth, she has committed a lot of crimes such as arson, criminal theft, murder, and drugs. Oh jeez, really trying to make this a bad character. Vera's personality is self-centered, arrogant, and selfish for her own benefit. And as you can see right here, this is really a roughish draft of her character at first. I'm glad it was changed later on in the renewed era. Alright, are we done yet? I'm about to be like 6 damn pages into the script. Wait, what? Drawings? Alright, I guess I should go over these too. First up is Advanced Podrock and Twirly. These bots are going to be made by Vera so she can kill Xander, but since I can't port mods to Gmod, these guys ended up being scrapped. Here's a drawing of Insane Remains and some broken version of Twirly. Then these guys right here, those random robots made by Hutao during the Fragmented Era. Also, I made several variants of Annie before he was ever involved in the Era U. The only design that actually came to fruition is Restored Annie, when Old had revived him. And also, here's another design of Monster Xander. Also, here's what Benny first looked like when he was just a random FNAF OC that I drew. These drawings are Vera and 2 random FNAF OCs that I made, but later turned to Vera's robotic minions. Next up are some drawings of potential designs of Pop Rock, and apparently a set-in-time year for the Fragmented Era. And also when Old was first drawn. Fun fact, his design was inspired by stylized Nightmare Young designs I'd sometimes see. Then we got the original design of Twirly, along with 2 other animatronics that only ever ended up getting a cameo in the Christmas special during the renewed era. And then one of the first drawings I ever made for the Fragmented Era, where I guess Pop Rock is haunting Xander and talking about him changing time a bunch. and finally an unused version of Monster Xander. And that brings us all to today, with plenty of scrap content and only 2 series that I consider fully canon. So all in all, I hope you learned something new today about the behind the scenes of the Air AU. Oh, by the way, I refer to the entirety of the series as the Air AU. As 2 bonuses, here's a little timeline summarizing the development for the series. And I've been thinking, you know that version of Xander wearing Pop Rock's dead body that came from another timeline? I've been thinking, what if I explore that part of the story? Perhaps only time can tell if I ever will.